Creatively different and boldly designed, French-wheeled tanks are usually much more fondly remembered than their tracked counterparts. This comes as no surprise, given the mixed performance of World War II-era French tracked tanks. Not to mention that after the war, French engineers opted for a completely new direction. Before World War II, French tanks were classified not by weight, such as light or medium, but by role, as infantry and cavalry tanks. Even though proper cavalry was gradually becoming a thing of the past, cavalry divisions still existed in practice, just not on paper. The French intended to use them for reconnaissance and establishing safe zones. Cavalry tanks needed to be fast and well-rounded, capable of handling reconnaissance tasks and engaging in direct confrontations when necessary. One of the first cavalry tanks was the AMC-34. The Renault company created a lightly armored combat vehicle equipped with a 47mm gun that could travel at a cruising speed of about 30 km per hour. The gun, roughly comparable to the one used on the heavy B-1, could be considered adequate for its time, but the tank's armor was subpar, and its mobility was not quite sufficient for the tasks at hand. Later designs saw more success, with French factories producing thousands of Hotchkiss H-35 tanks for cavalry and Renault R-35s for infantry, along with smaller numbers of AMC-35, FCM-36, and AMR-35 tanks. The large and diverse fleet of vehicles looked impressive on paper, but some models were outdated before their production even began. The FCM-36, in addition, proved to be quite costly, but infantry tanks were by far the most problematic. By the late 1930s, the R-35 was already falling behind its foreign counterparts in more ways than one. Cavalry units also struggled, but mostly because they were not getting enough modern tanks, like the Somme S-35. While the French were deliberating on the requirements for their next generation of vehicles and sifting through different designs, Germany invaded the country. Following France's defeat, captured tanks were repurposed by the Germans, primarily for training. However, some models like the Somme S-35 and Hotchkiss H-39 continued to perform effectively in combat. The post-war AMX-13 rightfully earned a stronger reputation. The French abandoned their outdated classification system and by 1946 introduced a cutting-edge design featuring an oscillating turret and autoloader. The AMX-13 was very impressive. Its SA-50 gun had ballistics comparable to those of the nearly 50-ton Panther tank, with a rate of fire of up to 12 rounds per minute, and decent mobility to boot. The only serious drawback was the need to reload the revolver-style magazine drum from the outside, meaning the crew had just 12 shots available in 2 drums for a single battle. The AMX-13 was used by Israeli forces during the Suez Crisis and by France itself during the Algerian War of Independence. The tank also achieved significant export success. It was purchased by India and many South American countries, including Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, and others. Its small size, relatively low cost, and high combat potential inspired engineers in the US, Sweden, and elsewhere. However, when it came to designing main battle tanks, the oscillating turret never caught on due to issues with gun stabilization and nuclear protection. The AMX-13 remained in service with France for several decades and underwent several modifications. For colonial conflicts, the tank was tested with other turrets, such as the one from the American M24 Chaffee or the FL-11 turret, used on the Panhard EBR armored vehicle. In both cases, the AMX-13 received a gun with worse ballistic qualities, but one more suited for infantry combat and more logistically advantageous. Although these models never became widespread, the idea of rearming was deemed a success in the eyes of French decision-makers. In the 1960s, the 75mm gun was modified to create a low-impulse 90mm gun that could fire high-explosive anti-tank rounds. Tanks with the new gun were designated as the AMX-13/90. Additionally, the light tank was used to develop a variety of tank destroyers armed with anti-tank missiles, from the first-generation Nord SS-11 to the more advanced HOT. Finally, like many mass-produced tanks, the AMX-13 served as a platform for other vehicles, such as the DCA-40 anti-aircraft gun. The Austrian SK-105 Cuirassier tank can also be considered a close relative of the AMX-13. Developed by Sauerwerke, the tank had an entirely original hull, with a 320 horsepower engine and a 6-speed transmission. Unlike the AMX-13, Austrian engineers placed the turret in the center of the vehicle. But the turret itself, based on an FL-12 variant, was a clear sign of their shared ancestry. At the same time as a more modern tank, the SK-105 was equipped with a laser rangefinder, dual fire control systems, and thermal imaging equipment. In short, it boasted many advantages over the regular AMX-13. As for the French, they never developed a light tank to replace their battle-proven veteran. In the late 1980s, the Creusot-Loire engineering conglomerate showed the Army the Mars 15 platform, suitable for mounting a turret with a large-caliber gun, being used as the basis for an infantry fighting vehicle, and other purposes. However, with the end of the Cold War, these plans were promptly abandoned. While most pre-war French tanks had a short service life, the AMX-13 enjoyed a long operational career. Retired from French service by the late 20th century, it remains in use today by countries like Morocco, Venezuela, and others. Some operators even developed modernization packages to bring the capabilities of these trusted combat vehicles up to modern standards. And of course, you can try out these tanks in War Thunder. Do you enjoy using the famous French 13-ton tank? Let us know in the comments down below.